the Apple Mail is going to be a bigger impact than what happened with Gmail. What people don't realize is you have to turn off all of the AI features on your iPhone with iOS 18.
Welcome to Avidly Talks, a mostly marketing, sales and HubSpot focused podcast. I'm recording this one in the open office because it was a bit echoey in one of the rooms. Each week we're diving into topics that help you do better in your work, try to make you smile along the way. So this week we're joined by the one and only Jay Schwedelson, a marketing expert, B2B email marketing expert, company founder, sought after public speaker. You're at Inbound 24 next month.
Yes, that's going to be wild. I'm excited for that. Inbound's an amazing event.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there again this year, so
Nice.
I'll come and say hello.
Please.
You also host the massively popular Do This Not That, a 10-minute episode podcast.
Yes.
And also Guru Email Marketing newsletter and conference,
Yes.
which is happening in October. So we'll
Appreciate that.
more about that later.
Yeah.
And I'll include the links, obviously, to those. But they're great fun and highly valuable, so I'm really excited to have you with us. How's it going?
I'm fired up. Always love talking email, B2B, all of it. Everything's always changing. So, I love to get into it.
Emily, who I work with in our team, said just before we were signing off, said, I've got Jay Schwedelson on the podcast. She was like, you're going to enjoy this one. I was like, yep.
Well, she's a liar, but that's okay. It's all right.
So we're going to talk about, this series is all about, obviously AI has been everywhere for the past 18 months, 2 years, but this summer in particular has seen a real acceleration in changes. Privacy updates, tools release, Search GPT, etc., etc. We're going to talk at it from the angle of email with you and AI in the era we're in when it comes to email marketing. So, just with all that going on in AI and data and privacy changes, tool changes, technology changing, how vital is a reliable email list for marketers, and why is the case? How did we get here?
Well, email, to me, your email database is the most valuable asset your company has. And the reason I say that is that it's great to have social media followers. Okay, it's great to try to do the SEO game, but there's no other way that you can communicate with the entire population of prospects or customers that you have at any one time other than email. That's the only way, because when you post on social, at best, you'll get to maybe 10% of your audience or your followers, and good luck with search and good luck with all the other channels. So making sure that you are intentional about growing your email database is important. It's also important because on an annualized basis, any B2B database, you'll have about 20% attrition, meaning you will lose about 20% of your file. So if you're not intentionally trying to grow your database, you're going to have no data in a very short order.
Absolutely. I think that points to just needing to always manage your data, grow it as well. How do you advise or see people doing nicely growing that data pile, that email list pile?
Yeah, a few things. I think the problem that marketers have is they say that there are certain tactics that they personally find annoying, so they don't do them. A great example of that is pop-up contact captures, right? You go to a website and it says, hey, give us your email address, and you get to download the 7 pitfalls to avoid for, the whatever sector. And on average, about 5% of first-time visitors to a website will actually give that email address and download that piece of content. But a lot of marketers are like, well, I find pop-ups annoying, so I'm not going to have them on my site. Well, it's more annoying not to have a database and your company to go out of business. And people don't leave your site because of a pop-up, right? They just exit out if they don't want to do it and they go on their way. So leveraging things like pop-up contact captures is important. And then the other thing is being very intentional on social media, putting out content and saying, hey, DM me and I'll get you a copy of whatever, or trying to send people to forums to fill things out. The whole point of having a social media following should be to ultimately grow your email database. It shouldn't just be to get people to like and comment and whatever. That ain't it. So every day when you are waking up or sleeping or whatever, there has to be things in place to grow your email database, or you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. So the 20% decay on that list, what are the things that are causing that? that perhaps people might overlook?
So that's a good question. So first off, you have people that will unsubscribe, and that's fine. People remove themselves. That happens all day long. A lot of job changes take place all the time. Okay, and then there's a lot of just burps in the internet, things that will cause email messages to bounce, and then after things bounce, systems will remove those addresses. So, and 20% is a lucky number. It can go well higher than that, and certainly in different sectors as you're seeing, job changes and all these different types of things. So if you think that you'll just be able to consistently just add to your database with nobody leaving your database, you are wrong.
How do you sort of distinguish? That's the word I'm after. How do you distinguish between somebody who's actually decayed and needs to come out versus somebody who's just letting the newsletters or the messages tick along, ready for when they want them? Because I get probably 50 newsletters a day nearly, it feels like, and I don't unsubscribe from them. I wait till I'm ready to read them. So how do you distinguish between those two things?
Yeah, I get pretty aggressive with things in terms of taking people off my lists. Another good example is Neil Patel.
Now,
Neil Patel is
he
NP
came to mind
Digital,
when you
one of the
talked
biggest
about
marketers out
pop-ups.
there.
He came to mind. I remember he was on the podcast a few years ago, and this was at the height of inbound
Yep.
content methodology,
Well,
and his site had
yep.
pop-ups. You've got to leave another pop-up. Yeah.
Always. So I just had Neil on my podcast, and I asked him what does he do with re-engagement? How long does he let people stay on his list that haven't opened or clicked or engaged with one of his emails, one of his B2B emails? He takes people off after 30 days. If someone hasn't opened or clicked on one of his emails, they are gone from his database.
What kind of sending cadence are we talking?
He's sending pretty frequently. He's sending pretty frequently. He has newsletters. He has all these blog things that he's sending people to. So he's sending multiple emails a week. But if you haven't opened up an email in 30 days, you're gone from his list. Now, that's aggressive. I think most people would be in the 6 month to a year category. But leaving people on your list it doesn't help anybody for two reasons. Number one, when you continue to send to people that don't open or click or reply or engage, it absolutely crushes your deliverability in terms of staying in the inbox. It's going to be one of the number one determining factors. And number two is I think it takes people's eyes off the ball. And what I mean is, in every company around the planet, there's the meeting that takes place all the time that is, oh, how do we get the 50% of our database who haven't opened or clicked in a year or 2 years? How do we get them to re-engage? What are we going to do? What are the offers? How are we going to win them back? And sadly, the same amount of energy is not focused on your new customers or new people that are entering your database. It's always about getting the old people who are no longer interested, back engaged. So it takes your eyes off the ball, it hurts your deliverability. So if people are interested, they'll come back, and it's okay if they don't. Focus on the people who want to focus on you, and I think it's a much better recipe for success.
Yeah, good advice. I'm glad you mentioned the 6 to 12 months thing as well, because we're not all Neil Patel with
Right.
audiences, and you focus quite largely on B2B email as well.
Yeah.
Any advice for people, in-house marketing teams who are probably getting pressure from sales or from their boss, from their CMO or whatever, how to build that nerve holding in terms of be disciplined with how ruthless you are on people staying in the list or not, because it's tempting to just cast that wider email net and keep people on the list just to pad the numbers almost, I guess.
Yeah, what I would say is that I would pick maybe 4 or 5 times a year where you're going to take everybody and go back to them. Right? So let's say you've come up with a program that if somebody doesn't engage, open, clicked, replied in 6 months, you're going to put them off to the side. 4 or 5 times a year, you could take everybody that you got when you got something really important to say, some amazing new piece of content, something really huge, and go back out to that entire database, engaged, non-engaged, whatever. And the reason that's a win is number one, your deliverability will be strong because you've gotten rid of the dead weight for the majority of your sends. But the other benefit by kind of going 4 or 5 times a year to your entire database is very similar to yourself, where you're saying, okay, I got these newsletters I really don't read. Maybe once in a while I'll go back to them. You forget which ones you're even on. But then all of a sudden you're not getting those emails. And then 3 months go by and all of a sudden you get one. You're like, what? Wait a minute. What is this thing? And it almost jolts you back into paying attention to that brand as opposed to the wallpaper of the weekly email that you're just ignoring. So it's a good way to still leverage your entire database without kind of just making it turn into wallpaper.
That's a good idea. That novelty factors. We've seen that. We've been doing some newsletter analysis and see that when newsletters are new, as you'd expect, there's you've got a novelty window where they'll open the first few every time, but then you
Totally.
see it drop off, don't you? So yeah, you can flip that round and wake up people by messaging them with a big topic less frequently. Something you were just chatting about before we started recording.
Yeah.
AI in the content landscape. I was going to talk to you about. You mentioned Apple
Yeah.
AI and effect on the inbox. What were you getting at?
So Apple right now it only has the beta version out, but iOS 18, which is the operating system we're all going to be using on our phones, is going to be on all of our phones before the end of the calendar year 2024. Right now, it's only in beta, and part of that is, of course, their big AI update, which is called Apple Intelligence, and there's a massive update coming to the Mail app, the little blue icon that's on all of our phones. Now, some of you may think, okay, well, I don't use an Apple email address. What does that have to do with it? You could have a Gmail address, you could have any kind of email address, it doesn't matter because 46% of all mail is checked using that blue icon on your iPhone. Okay. And the big change that's coming is that Apple, using their AI, is going to be sort of similar to Gmail, but not. They're going to be bucketing the emails that you receive into different tabs. There's going to be a primary tab, a promotions tab, an updates tab, all these different tabs, depending on what the email is about. Now, the issue is if you wind up, let's say, in the promotions tab with all your emails, they're not going to do that well, right? And so what the game is going to be is how do we stay in the primary tab or even the updates tab because they're going to be the ones that are checked most often. And the way you're going to stay in those tabs is actually being more of a human, having newsletters that don't come from a brand, but they actually come from a person, right? Getting people to reply to emails that you're sending as opposed to just opening them. There's going to be a whole different way that we're going to need to interact. And the reason that the Apple Mail is going to be a bigger impact than what happened with Gmail. Because when Gmail had announced their tabs years ago, there wasn't a huge adoption rate. Their promotions tab didn't really impact marketers that much. But the game here is in Gmail, you could turn that off pretty easily. What people don't realize is currently, in order to turn off the bucketing of your emails within iOS, you have to turn off all of the AI features on your iPhone with iOS 18. You're either going to have all Apple Intelligence, ChatGPT, and your maps and everything, or you're going to get nothing. And so I think people are going to really want all those AI features. So it's going to cause everyone using their mail app to actually have to interact with these tabs. And as marketers, we're going to have to figure out how do we stay in that update or primary tab.
Interesting. How is it going to be different as tactic wise, do you think, versus how we know it today?
Yeah, it is. I think that we are going to have to be a much more human level, right? So for right now, for example, if you send out an email newsletter and it comes from your brand, the Acme company, update, whatever, we're already starting to see a big shift towards them coming from an executive within a company, Joe Smith or whatever. And the tone of the email is much more of a human tone as opposed to just a brand tone. And there's a lot of encouragement of, hey, reply to this email. I'm reading these emails, whatever. Doesn't matter how big your brand is. This idea of layering in the humanity, because those are the emails from all the testing that we're seeing that are actually going to stay in the primary because they're going to feel more one to one with the individual.
Well, do you know what I do like is whenever you do reply when people ask that, the newsletter senders do reply back,
Yes,
which is good.
it's
It's that
amazing.
human things in action, isn't it?
Yeah, the irony of what Apple's doing is they're going to be using AI, and yet as marketers, we have to act more human because of the AI.
Mm.
It's fairly ironic. But the whole thing about AI and email is that the pendulum swung too far. We got this shiny toy with AI. And so we all started using it for content generation, for writing, for blogs, for newsletters, for everything. Everybody's doing it. So now all of the emails and everything going out is so generic, right? That what is standing out, what's going to stand out as we head into next year is going to be the humanity of it all. And that is how you're going to win the day in email. It's not going to be this boring stuff. So it's going to be subject lines with poor grammar. It's going to be, things where it doesn't make any sense. You'll start a subject line with the word and or but or shh or psst. Things that AI would never recommend you to do
I think you
is what's
suggested
going
a
to
great
work
one.
in email.
Sorry to talk over you. Then you mentioned
Yeah.
on the Exit 5 podcast recently.
Yeah.
A great tip from that was something really out there. No, thank you.
Right.
Though just a nice little tactical hack of. But I think it was described as we're accustomed to just clearing the inbox.
Yes.
So it's okay to be sort of daring like that or cheeky like that with your subject lines, right?
It's across the board, right? I mean, it's even social posts, right? So you go on LinkedIn, what are the posts that do the best? It's lo-fi content. It is when people are pointing the camera at themselves, right? That is what works the best. And you see, the founder of Chili Piper, she'll point the camera at herself all the time. The founder of Morning Brew, Alex Lieberman, he posts the craziest stuff, right? Dharmesh from HubSpot. Why does everybody like Dharmesh? Because he's real. He shares real stuff, and he's not all buttoned up. And that is where we're headed with content. That's where we're headed with brands. Brands need to have an identity beyond just this boring generic garbage.
I noticed with the email sorting, back to AI sorting your emails for you. I had a look into it ahead of this on my. We use Gmail, and inside the promotions tab were some human one-to-one chats that were follow-up sales chats from people trying to sell us software. But it knew to put those into there. So as even one-to-ones, I don't know how that's going to iron out, like the AI knowing where to put that until I move it. But I just find that interesting that there's no given.
Oh, that's a fact. You couldn't be more right. I mean, everybody will be chasing their tail because there's nothing anybody's going to do that's going to get everything into the right tab, into the right thing. It's the same thing with going to the junk folder. People think that they send out an email, maybe they send it at a different time, or they put a word in the subject line, or they did something, and they see an email go in the junk folder, like, uh-oh, it's because we just did that. It's not true. It doesn't matter if you're Amazon, Apple, IBM, HubSpot, whatever, some portion of all your emails will go to the junk folder. It's the nature of the internet. Some portion of your emails will go to the promotions tab, the tab that you don't want it to go to in Gmail and Apple, whatever. It doesn't matter. So you want to do your best to put your best foot forward, but with a management of expectations that it's not going to be perfect.
No, exactly. Cool. So next topic I wanted to pick your brains about was how are you seeing, you see a lot of emails, you see a lot of tactics, you talk about it with a lot of people. How are you seeing mainly B2B companies misunderstanding or misusing email as a channel? What metrics are they looking at and what metrics are they ignoring?
Yeah, I don't think that enough B2B marketers are trying to generate, as you talked about before, replies. I think we're all still very focused on, I got a piece of content, click here to download it, click here to register for the webinar. It is very rarely, trying to get people to reply and actually create the relationship of any kind. And I think it's ridiculous. It's just so boring, and it doesn't really generate the response that you want. And what really works best for B2B marketers is this idea of no agenda marketing, right? When's the last time you sent stuff out that literally had no agenda? You weren't trying to get somebody to download something where they had to fill out a form or register for a webinar they had to watch. It was something that was just for them, where you sent an email, say, hey, I came across this piece of content. I thought it was perfect for you. It's about whatever. 71% of people know about blah, blah, blah. Just wanted to send it your way. And you're not saying, let's have a call. You're not saying sign up for this. You're not saying there's a form. Just here you go. And this idea of no agenda marketing, if you do, and we've done this big study, if you send out 3 emails in a row to your prospect database that you're trying to market to, and it has no agenda, the 3 emails, thought you'd find this interesting, oh, this is really cool, whatever, and you have really good subject lines. When you send out that 4th email asking that person to do something, whatever it is, we see an exponentially higher response rate on that 4th email. Because all of a sudden you're maybe a little bit of a thought leader with them. Maybe you've built some credibility. You're not just a jerk that just sends garbage all the time. And I think that that's where B2B marketers are missing the boat. They're just pounding away with garbage and garbage and garbage. You don't have to do that to win.
It's brilliant. Yeah, I like that. Would you what you need is a bit of nerve to do that as well. To not just
I know, right?
stick it in as a little. Well,
Right, like
they might want to click it, but
right,
no,
right, right.
the
By the
whole thing doesn't
way,
work. Yeah.
you know, wait for that fourth email. Give it a shot. You'll be surprised.
It's how you'd act at, say, back to inbound,
Yeah,
the big
yeah,
demo trade floor.
yeah,
The most popular booths are the one who don't sell to you. They're the ones with
yeah.
a nice game, just come and have fun. Do you want a free pen? Yeah, no worries. They're the ones
100%.
that people are getting the most foot traffic to. So yeah, it makes sense that it applies in emails.
Always. Yeah.
Psychology. Newsletter specifically now, just because I think that was my thing I share most is your email newsletter tips. And what's some well, actually, no. What's your process that you like for creating newsletter? Obviously, there's AI in the mix. You talked about everybody sending AI generated content. What role does that play? But what's your creative process generally for putting together newsletters?
Yeah, I mean, my newsletter is a little bit odd, and I know that because what I try to do is I make it as simple as possible. Like, okay, here's a few tips that you could take right now, and you could try to test them out for yourself. And then at the bottom of my newsletter, I always put in whatever's going on in my life, TV shows I'm watching, whatever I'm eating, something ridiculous. And what I found is that before I didn't include that bottom section where it was just the kind of the work stuff. My newsletters did okay, but as soon as I started including the like humanity of it, right, the more personal side of it, my newsletter exploded. And there are other newsletters like this, like my buddy from the Marketing Millennials, Daniel Murray. He has an amazing newsletter. And at the bottom, he'll talk, oh, I just bought my wife this thing. I played tennis. I sucked, whatever. I think injecting humanity into your newsletters is an underrated thing to do in this world that we're in. So that's my process is just a bizarro process. And the other thing I'll throw out there is if you're not republishing your newsletter on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn newsletter, I think you're completely missing the boat.
Mm. It's a free hit, avoiding duplicate content anyway or anything like that. I think
Well, there's one piece about LinkedIn newsletters I don't think people realize. So when you go on LinkedIn and you publish your first newsletter, what happens is, yeah, it generates a post. Who cares? But it's the single event that beats all of social media. So when you publish just one newsletter on LinkedIn, it will instantly send out an invitation to every person that you are connected to or that follows you to subscribe to your newsletter instantly, right? Everybody's seen them on LinkedIn. You want to subscribe to blah, blah, blah. And then even if you never publish another newsletter again, every time you get a new connection or a new follower, it will then immediately ask that person, do you want to subscribe to this person's newsletter? So you could wait a year until you publish the second newsletter, and you'll be building up this following, this newsletter following on your every single day, right? And then when you do publish that next newsletter, it goes out via email, and it goes right to the inbox because LinkedIn's sending it out. And you have this whole other population of people that aren't subscribed to your regular email list that are getting your email newsletter. So if you're not doing a LinkedIn version, I think you are bananas.
No, I agree. As where do you stand on that specifically? Are you talking personal accounts or company pages?
I like it for your personal. I like it for your personal. And LinkedIn actually just this week changed something where you're now allowed, if you want to put ad dollars and boost your newsletter that you publish on LinkedIn, you can now do that on a personal page. Up until this week, you could only do it on a company page newsletter, but LinkedIn is going all in on personal newsletters. So I think it's great.
Nice. Email newsletters.
Yeah.
What are your top features? Timing, could be content features. You got the personal thing, but what else is it? Is it about design? Is it about when you send it? Is it the subject line? What's a top priority?
Well, definitely a subject line. If the subject line doesn't grab you, you are done, right? And I'm not saying you should do this, but if you look at the biggest newsletters in the world, they all go out incredibly early in the morning, and the first character of over half of the biggest newsletters on the planet are an emoji. That is, I mean, if I say to you morning brew, most people already know that cup of coffee emoji. They can see it in their head, right? They have branded that. And that's over half of the biggest newsletters use an emoji as that first character. And then I think within the newsletter, I think having a meme here or there, I think is really important because you got to break up the boring. And for some people, like, oh, that's off brand, that's this, that's that. That's garbage. I mean, go on LinkedIn and follow Cisco's LinkedIn page or follow SEM Rush. I mean, you'll see they're posting pictures of dogs and cats and craziness. Don't tell me your brand is too serious because it's just not true.
And probably barring 1% of companies, probably a bad thing to be seen as too serious anyway. Lighten up, be human.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Look, we're coming up to time. A couple of more things to talk about. But before that, I want to just pick your brain on some either or versus.
Got it.
Designed email or plain text?
It's got to be a mix. I don't think fully graphical or fully text is the way. It's a hybrid. I think that's important.
In your inbox, do you go by read and unread, or do you use the folders and labels?
Oh, I go by read and unread. My inbox is a disaster. I always try to come up with a new plan. It never works. It is so bad. So if you have a plan, I will follow it. If you have a good one, I will follow your plan.
As good as I've got is under 10 unreads. They're the do that this week. And then if I don't get to it, I take the link out of whatever it is and put it in my calendar.
Wow, that's good. I like that. I might steal that.
Everything else goes into unread.
I like it.
Red. Everything else goes into red. Sorry, red.
Okay. I might do that.
Send from company or send from person?
Person from company. I like,
that was
Jay
my next
from
one.
Guru Media.
Okay. I was going to say full name or name from.
Okay. At least the first name. I like, also full name, but get a name in there in some way, shape, or form. It can't just be the brand. Nobody cares about your brand.
Especially with AI sorting it for you. Email subject lines with emoji or without emoji?
I think it's a mixed bag. You don't want to become wallpaper and you want to be a clown and just always use an emoji. But if you're not kind of putting in there every third or fourth email, I think you're missing an opportunity to stand out. And it doesn't have to be a ridiculous emoji. I mean, it could be a circle. It could be a check mark. It doesn't have to be a green guy's face that's nauseous. So it could be anything.
Do you put every link in an email to the same destination or multiple CTAs?
For the most part, I try to drive, if I have an offer, everything will go to the one place. If it's a newsletter, it's going to go all over the place. But if you have an offer email, it boggles my mind why you would have things going to multiple destinations. It's like, what is the point of the email? If it's to get the offer sold, drive them there. Take your social sharing links out of your offer emails. Makes no sense to me. Just focus it.
Agreed. Okay, last proper question. Just to finish, what's the one thing listeners can do or action this week after listening to this to get better at email marketing? Mostly B2B.
I would spend a little time with your call to action buttons. The buttons in your emails, the long rectangular ones. Don't say things like register or download. That is for you. That's not for the recipient. Have the words say something for them. It could say, I want in, save my seat, give me my free content.
First person.
Think about the recipient every time.
First person as well?
First person for the win. Every time your button should be written in first person.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank
Emily
you.
was
It was
right.
fun.
I did enjoy that. So if you're at Inbound 24 next month, you can find Jay on stage. You can also sign up to Guru Conference 16th to 17th October. It is really good fun. It is hands down the best virtual conference you will sign up to this year.
Thank you.
Also check out his podcast, Do This, Not That. If you haven't got 10 minutes to make yourself better as a marketer, you're not doing it right. So if you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast, be sure to leave us a comment and a 5-star review. Spotify's doing comments. Let's try that out. Plus, hit that follow button to not miss future episodes and check out some of the previous 100+ episodes we've got in the back catalogue. So thanks, Jay. I'll come and catch you in Boston in a few weeks.
Yeah, man, we got to hang out. Looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Thanks very much. See you soon.
All right.
This was an episode of Avidly Talks, a mostly marketing, sales and HubSpot-focused podcast, brought to you by the team at Avidly, an international agency and multiple times winner of HubSpot Global Partner of the Year. Each week, we're diving into topics to help you do better in your work and try to make you smile along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a comment on Spotify and a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Be sure to subscribe to get the next episode in the series, and you can also find out more about us at avidlyagency.com/HubSpot.